So, funny story, I actually booked this track day back at the start of February and completely forgot about it. I think the date got postponed or changed or something like that, and I completely forgot that it got rebooked. I didn't put it in my calendar or anything. So I had a couple of people asking if I was going to come down, because there's a group of us that normally do the NSCC track days that are on once or twice a year. And I said no, because I didn't think the car would be ready, but the car is ready. And when I saw my name on the entry list on Thursday, I quickly cleared my plans for Sunday, put some fuel in the car, checked the oil, and here we are. We're on our way down to Wakefield Park down in Goulburn. Now, because it is such short notice, I'm not quite as prepared as I'd like to be. So we're on the Zestino 07R, my road tyre, which isn't ideal, but it should prove as a great opportunity to shake the car down for the first time with the turbo, feel the power out, get comfortable with it now that it's making twice the torque and 100 kilowatt more than it was before, and just see how we go really. The alignment hasn't been checked since Subinats, so that was a couple of months ago, probably 4 or 5 track days ago, and a couple of thousand Ks, which isn't ideal. I would like to have had a look at it, but I just didn't have time, which is all fine. We're not looking for lap times today. We're just going to go shake the car down, have some fun, see if the car needs anything before we start doing competitive events as well, and just see how we go really. Now, the first 2 things I want to talk about, I've actually realised before we've even gotten to the track. The first one is this exhaust. Given the size of it, it's 3-inch the whole way through from the overpipe back, full catless in the front pipe. There is a big res in the mid pipe, like there is in most catbacks, and a big 4-inch cannon at the back. So I was a bit worried that it was going to be a bit loud, but Mike from SME assured me that it would be sweet, and it's one of the best sounding catbacks out there, and he's 100% correct. There's no drone at all, which I was worried about, and it's actually quieter in here now than it used to be NA. That's because we've actually gone back to the 4.1, so the standard final drive in the diff instead of the 4.5. So we've actually lost about 800 revs on the highway, sitting at 115. So the overall volume is about the same, if not a little bit quieter now turbo than it was NA. Now, I'm not going to call it a quiet car at all. There's no interior behind me. There's rose joints all throughout the arms and the suspension and stuff. So it is a bloody noisy car on the highway, but it's not drony, it's not boomy, which I was worried about, so that's awesome. The second thing, actually there's kind of 3 things. So the second thing is partly to do with that diff swap as well. And the fuel economy is actually better on the highway now with the turbo than it was NA because of the revs, because we're sitting at 3 grand at 115. So that's awesome. The third thing, even though I said there was 2 because I can't count, is that once we got onto the Hume Highway, I put it in 6th. I haven't touched the shifter since, which is a new phenomenon for me coming from an NA car. Now, with the 4.5 final drive, it was pretty good at getting up hills, but even with these monster hills on the Hume, I haven't downshifted at all. As you start getting up hills, you can hear the turbo start to spool and whistle away, which is kind of cool, but it's so happy just cruising up big hills in 6, which is definitely new for me. So anyway, we're almost at Wakefield Park. I just thought I'd bring you guys along for the first test day, the first shakedown with all the new power and stuff like that, and see how we go. Alright, good morning. First session out. The track here is pretty wet still, so there's a river running across the start finish. There's a river across the kink, there's a river across 2, there's a river coming down the hill, there's a river on the exit of Fishhook, and there's a river at turn 10. So it's going to be very slippery. It is cold, it's 11 degrees. So it's going to be wet and cold and slippery. But we'll see how we go. Hopefully you can hear me. Hopefully my microphone's working. I'm trying a new setup, so we'll see how we go. Oh, she sure is slippery. This first session's really just going to be about getting heat into the car, into the gearbox and the axles and the engine, and a bit into the tyres and the brakes. The thing I do really have to remember here now is that
if it does start to wheel spin a bit, especially when it's a bit damp on the exit, we've got the torque now to just short shift it a bit. Which is not something I've had in the past, that's for sure. So like on the way out here, it'll light right up. But if we just short shift it, it settles right down. Here, I should probably just grab 4th here because it's just torque. Oil temps and water temps are alright. Obviously we're not driving it that hard, but I have done a couple laps in succession, so it's good to see that it's still happy, as we have a big one. And there's an S13 in front of us on slicks, so I'm sure he's having a great morning too. Grab that gear nice and early, I can get on the power a little bit harder and earlier because it doesn't want to wick up quite as much, which is definitely something I'm going to have to learn and get used to, because in an NA86 there is no short shifting, it's not allowed. Like it still wants to step out and wick up, but because it's coming on a little bit earlier in the power band, it's not quite as spiky. So you're just relying on the torque a bit more than the overall power. Bit of wheel spin in 3rd. Kind of nice to be able to kind of keep up with Jaden. I've never been able to do that before. And it's now interesting because I'm downshifting turbo where I would normally be braking NA, so man, the glare off that water is incredible with the sun out. Water temps and oil temps are still awesome. Doesn't even look like the oil's hit 100 degrees yet, which is good. Oh man, I love this car. This car was so much fun NA, but now with this turbo on it, even in the wet, it's shitty conditions, I'm not gonna lie, but it's so much fun. Oh. So if anyone ever asks if a turbo's worth the money, I think my smile, which you probably can't see through my helmet, definitely says, yes, it is worth the money, it's worth every cent. This car was a lot of fun NA, as I said before, but this is just on another planet now, man. This is so good. I love you, Tyler Mecklem. I love you, Big Mike. This is insane. Alrighty, so session 2. It's getting pretty windy and the sun's come out, and there's been quite a few cars over the track in the last hour. So I'm really hoping it does start to dry out soon. I don't think the river down the straight's going to dry out, nor do I think the one at turn 2. The one at Fishhook might, but the one over the hill should be fine. And the one coming onto turn 10 should be fine, it should dry out. We'll see if I'm just making shit up in a couple of hours' time. But it should be okay. But yeah, the one down the straight, there's that much watery up against the wall. It's not going to be dry for a while. Wave our little buddy Jaden through. Cheeky little drag race. Alright, so we'll just let it cool down a little bit for a lap. The oil temp seems to be still below 100. And a quick wave to our mate Chris. Shout out to Chris for buying all my NA parts off me so that I could pay for the turbo kit and to get it all done. Certainly made my life a whole lot easier, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that car. He's adding unequal length headers to the diff I had and the intake I had, so I think that thing is going to be so responsive. It's going to be a bit of a weapon with all that mid-range, so I'm really looking forward to seeing it. That exhaust makes some cool noises. Quick little wave to Chris on the hill taking photos today. Alright, so I definitely got a little bit greedy a couple of times coming out of 2 there, but the rest of the track is drying up nicely. It's still very greasy, especially coming down into the hill here, it's pretty greasy, but I reckon by the afternoon we might have a pretty dry track to have a bit of fun on. This thing's incredible. Even though I have spun it twice on the exit of 2, the power delivery is so good, and it's spinning purely just because I'm being a greedy bastard, really. It's wet, it's slippery. If it was NA, it would still spin there. But this power delivery is so good, and it's exactly why Tyler and Mike chose to spec the G30 660 kit on this car, because it's so linear and the torque curve is so flat, and it's just so nice. Perfect for the track, perfect for the track. Even in the wet, like, yes, it is lighting up wheels a little bit in the wet. That's because it's wet and it's slippery. It's so not peaky, whereas some of the smaller kits, and we'll explain this all in the full walk around video we're doing, explaining what we've done and why we've done it and stuff like that. But yeah, speccing the turbo size up like this is simply just to make that power delivery so good. Some of the smaller kits are really good on the street, but they do wick up a bit, so they come on power pretty quickly and pretty hard, which would be a weapon on the street, but on track this thing's awesome. Alright, so session number 5. There has been 2 sessions since I last saw you. Session number 3 I was a bit late to, so I didn't record. Session number 4 was a passenger session. But in session 3 we did get it down to a 113, even with it being quite wet in a couple of spots. And it's definitely dried out a bit in the last hour and a half. So I'm keen to have a crack and see where we can get it. If I can get pretty close to my full dry NA time in the wet on the 07R, I'll be pretty stoked, that's for sure. I've also just realized that in the morning sessions I had the stabilization on the GoPro set wrong, so I apologize if that was a bit nauseating to watch. Man, that sun's making it hard to see. We'll just drive out of it with the torque. Water's right in the wrong spot through there. Hold on to it! Yee-hoo! I cocked that up. Get a bit of jump action for Chris, shooting down there. Oh, fucked that up too. Alright, so I stuffed that one up on the exit of 2, so I just let it cool down again, go again. It's really hard there to judge what the grip's like with the water, and there's dirt down and all sorts of stuff, so even grabbing 430 is not going to do a great deal because it's just slippery. There we go, just pedal it a little bit more. Got a little bit spooked coming off the curb, so I turned it in a little bit late. Man, this thing makes some cool noises. That was a big one. So with the whirlwind of yesterday afternoon, I actually forgot to film an outro for this video, which is kind of important. We got off track at about 4:30 and all I wanted to do was pack up and drive home. Since we last spoke, I actually did another 3 sessions totaling 8 and about 60 laps throughout the day, which I reckon is pretty awesome signs for reliability for this thing now that it's got the turbo. Now I was never actually questioning the reliability of this thing, but it is a little bit nerve-wracking when you take a naturally aspirated car, bolt a turbo to it, make 2.5 times the factory power, and then go thrash it around all day. The main aim for yesterday was actually to test the heating and cooling with this thing, but given it only got up to a high of 10 degrees ambient in Goulburn, we couldn't really test that. The oil never hit 100 degrees and the water hovered around 90 to 92, but yeah, given how cool it is, it's pretty hard to test. Also related to the weather, we didn't have any fuel surge issues, which again, if it's going to happen anywhere at Wakefield Park, it's going to be the fish hook, but it was wet all day, so it never really got loaded up enough to have surge issues. Other than that, the car was awesome as it always is because we haven't really changed anything else. Another thing I do want to address though is a bit of a change in the rear suspension setup and a bit of an alignment change. Ever since the car was NA, we've always had a bit of an issue with drive out of the low speed corners, and adding power and torque didn't help that at all. Overall, the car was a ball of fun and I can't wait to get back out there on a dry track with a faster tyre. But in saying that, the Zestino 07R actually held up alright. We came in P3 for the day, even though it's just a track day and it's not competitive, but it's pretty comforting taking a new car out, shaking it down in the wet and coming out on top of cars on a much quicker tyre and finishing P3 behind 2 cars both on Yokohamas. So that was a pretty good feeling. We've got a little bit to play with in the rear suspension. We've got a bit of cleaning up to do because the car is pretty muddy. I know it's been a long video. If you want to watch more lapping stuff from the turbo day, I'll put the links down below of all those other videos. And it's raining, so I'm going to go inside.